What's going on, guys? It's your boy J2ATV. I'm back with another banger for y'all. Welcome back to the channel. Today I've got another what if style video for you guys since you guys like the last one so much. And we're gonna be pivoting back to some Avatar stuff. After talking with my nephew, I thought a really interesting topic would be, what if Aang never ran away from home? We're gonna just go back to Aang's origins and the very beginning of the story. We're also gonna touch on some characters that may have been introduced if the story ended up going that way, and also revisit some familiar characters that you probably all know and love. Mind you, there's not solid background information for a lot of these claims. It's really just coming from my imagination. And at the end, I have a special reveal for who I think that the next Avatar would be if Aang ended up living his full adult life and never enclosed himself in ice to be found 100 years later. Guys, please make sure you smash the like button and subscribe. It really helps boost our videos for the YouTube algorithm. So looking back at Aang's kind of origin, we see that Aang lived a happy life early on at the Southern Air Temple. He had friends, they created games, he was like any other normal 12-year-old boy. One day, Aang overhears some of the airbending masters telling Gyatso that his life around friends was distracting him from his soon-to-be Avatar duties, and that they were going to remove Aang from Gyatso's care, further isolating him from his friends, loved ones, childhood, etc. So obviously, Aang gets sad and really isolated because a lot of his friends distanced themselves after learning that he was the Avatar. They saw it unfit for him to play and be normal amongst them, as he had some sort of unwritten advantage just being the Avatar. So what happens? Aang runs away, he gets trapped in a storm, and then he ends up getting frozen in ice. That's kind of the storyline all the way up to where as we know it. And I think if Aang never ended up running away from home, obviously everything that happened preceding that would stay exactly the same. So when we really look and dissect a lot of the problems and what was going on at that time for Aang, to be quite honest with you, most of Aang's problems were probably temporary. For example, the other airbending masters saying that they're gonna take Aang away and isolate him was probably just a measure to kind of control and, get Aang on the right track that they saw fit. But I don't think that meant that Aang couldn't hang around Gyatso. I think they were just trying to limit the amount of time that he spent with him to like kind of separate the father-son dynamic and that bond that they were building. They needed Aang kind of to stay more towards the traditional airbender, air nomad lifestyle and detach themselves from all things that they love and that they care about so that they can become as strong as possible and as spiritually connected as possible. So I think that Gyatso still could have ended up training Aang. I also think that some of his friends down the line, like they had just learned that he was the Avatar. So I think if you give it some time, eventually they might end up coming around. No different than Katara and Sokka ended up coming around and actually supporting Aang and becoming his family later on in the story that we know of. With that being said, I still think that there would have been tragedy. So imagine Aang sticks around, Gyatso ends up training him, some of the airbending monks train him, some of his friends are a little bit distant, but they end up coming around a little later. Aang's getting stronger. I think that the Fire Nation still comes. I think that they come to exactly how we saw in the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender, what they decided to start the show with, and what we later come to find out happened in the cartoon. The Fire Nation, in fear of the new Avatar, comes looking to basically just commit genocide to the entire Southern Air Temple. So yeah, when the Fire Nation raided during Sozin's Comet, there's really two ways that I could see that whole thing going down. The first being that they just decide to hide Aang. They stow him away or send him somewhere close by but remote enough where the Firebenders couldn't find Aang, but maybe he does like some sort of sneak attack on some of the Fire Nation as they're leaving or as they're like coming in, and he provides some sort of remote support dash just entirely hiding away completely. That's one way. I don't really see that way happening, but it is an option. The second option, after having been a natural born talent and training with Gyatso and the other monks for some time, I think that Aang and Gyatso would have made actually a really good combination. We see that Gyatso was able to take out several, like multiple comet boosted firebenders on his own. A major fan theory is that Gyatso sucked all the air out of the room and suffocated himself along with the other firebenders in there, but it's also very possible that Gyatso was just him and he just decided to take everybody out and he was just him. He was like that. So when you add a trained Aang into the mix with Gyatso and company, who knows? Maybe, I don't know exactly how the number of firebenders that invaded the air temple that day. Mind you, they were comet boosted, but looking what Gyatso was able to do, you stack Aang on top of that, maybe that could have put them over the hump, where even if they didn't defend the entire temple and save everyone, maybe they were able to, them to survive, kill off some firebenders and escape with just a small group, and everyone doesn't have to die. Then Aang wouldn't be the last airbender, and then he, maybe could train some of the other ones, maybe start some sort of like refugee kind of separate colony, kind of like what we see with the Earth Nation at Ba Sing Se and Omashu later on down the line, but who knows? Let's just say, for the sake of this what if, that Gyatso still ends up dying during the raid. I think that just like we see later when Aang discovers Gyatso's corpse when he's with Katara and Sokka and they go back to his air temple and ends up going Avatar state, I think that something similar would happen then. Like Aang sees Gyatso get killed, or Aang's like scrambling around doing other things fighting, and then he's, in a similar fashion comes to find Gyatso's corpse. I think he goes Avatar state and completely wipes out all of the rest, if not most, of the firebenders that are attacking his temple during Sozin's Comet. We see the amount of destructive power even towards the beginning of the series that Aang is capable of during the season 1 finale when he partners up with the Moon Spirit and takes out all of the entire fleet when Zhao and Iroh also are leading the charge. And we also see it a little bit later in season 2 when Aang awakens the Avatar state, essentially forced when his friends are being attacked by, you know, that local earthbending general. And then again when Appa's taken, and also again, like I said, when Aang very first finds Gyatso's corpse. Mind you, it's not the polished version of Avatar state that we see later at the end of the series when he's fighting the Fire Lord, but it's still enough to take out an entire army. So I think it would still be enough to do some serious damage to even comet boosted firebenders. So that being said, I think that Aang would escape with a very small number of airbenders that survived, like most likely some of the stronger ones or small children from the Soden's Comet raid. And having no master, no one left to train him in some of the other elements, he's going to have to head over to Omashu, where I think he would link up with Bumi. I think that Bumi and Aang would go on a lot of adventures. They seem to have really good chemistry even 100 years later when we see them in the original version of the series. They're also both extremely powerful, so they would have to defeat some of the Fire Nation that has followed him to Omashu, knowing that he would probably go there in search of some type of master. I think that they would be able to handle themselves just fine, just the two of them, as we see Aang and crew do in the original series. I think that they would then set their sights on heading towards the Water Tribe. I think there would be some really dope fight scenes, some cool earthbending. Maybe Aang even learns a little bit of earthbending from Bumi, but maybe not too much, as that was still an extreme jump like we see in the original series. He learns waterbending from Katara first. It's more similar to his airbending, and you know, maybe he would struggle a little bit more learning earth, similar to how Toph had to forcefully kind of work her way and find a way that worked to teach it to Aang. But maybe he gets a little touch of some earthbending, kind of we see Aang gets a little touch of some firebending when he learns from Zhang early on in the series. That being said, I think that they head to the Northern Water Tribe as it's a little more established, and the Southern Water Tribe was still being attacked and raided, as we saw stories from, you know, Hama and Katara's grandmother. It's just a smaller group and a little bit more secluded and less known. Since also Aang started the trip and kind of went the Earth route, even though Aang is from the Southern Air Temple and it would make sense to go to the Southern Water Tribe since it's closer, in my story, Aang heads a little bit away to go towards the Earth Kingdoms, and you know, it only makes sense that if he's gonna make the same distance going up or down, that he would just continue up to the more established tribe than the south. So yeah, once he gets there, I think that they find some type of waterbending companion to add to the group, someone that's capable enough to train Aang, and also all the while Aang is still learning some earthbending basics from Bumi. Obviously, as we see in the original series, there's really no earth and it's kind of all ice at the Northern Temple, but hey, maybe they pick up the companion from the Water Tribe and they head to other places and have different types of adventures where they're going to scavenge for food, resources, scrolls, places to train, and then they dip back and forth between the Northern Tribe and some of the Earth Kingdom places so that Aang can continue practicing both water and earthbending. I think that they also find someone that maybe we don't know of. Like, I picked Bumi for the earthbender since that kind of makes sense along with the story, but hey, we haven't, at least in Korra we do, but in the original series of Avatar, there's not a whole ton of like super powerful waterbenders that are kind of shown in the show. So I think it makes sense that it would probably be someone that we're not as familiar with, or someone completely made up that would end up joining them. And since women were not really allowed to learn bending in the Northern Tribe, maybe he picks up healers specifically that comes along to help, or hey, maybe it's an all guy group. I guess it's not super possible that it really would be some type of all-powerful female vendor, unless maybe, let's just say for the sake of the argument, that he finds similar to Toph, like someone that is super powerful but it's kind of in hiding because of that, you know, cultural or just shame that comes along with having bending. Like, let's go with that. It's a super powerful, in hiding female bender that they end up finding and bringing along to the group. So like I said, the three of them end up training and going back and forth between the Water Tribe and some of the Earth Kingdoms to train before each of them getting powerful enough to make a stand and head into one of the Fire Nations undercover, where they're in search of Kuzan, where Aang can master firebending and learn alongside Kuzan, Bumi, and this mysterious underground, super powerful Water Tribe female bender that they end up finding. The show mentions Kuzan a bit, and Aang actually ends up taking his name when he ends up going to Fire Nation school, when they do the exact same thing and kind of undercover infiltrate the Fire Nation. But he's kind of like from Naruto Shisui. Like, he's mentioned a lot, but he's kind of not ever shown, like his abilities and how strong he was never actually shown in the show. So I think it would be really cool to, you know, expand on, you know, a younger Bumi and then also see what Kuzan was all about. So then yeah, just to end, there's basically decades of those three basically fighting off the Fire Nation, going back and forth to these different places, having adventures, doing the whole bit, all the while Aang's mastering the four elements and getting stronger. In the original series, we see that Aang was able to master all four, not master, I mean, he was pretty good with, but I mean, in the finale, we see that he really only uses airbending and earthbending. He doesn't really use waterbending or fire too much, even though he was comet boosted. He didn't really master, but let's just say for the sake of argument, he was able to master the four elements in a summer. I think that with this extended period of time, where it's like years, that Aang is kind of even stronger than what we see him as in the original series. I think that he never is able to really meet the turtle, and you know, the combination of those four powerful benders, they're able to not only stop the Fire Nation. Obviously this is way before the next Sozin's Comet, so there's no comet boosted, no Fire Lord Ozai's plan, none of that, so they're able to just very easily do away with the Fire Lord. Does Aang end up killing him still in the end? That's really up for you guys' interpretation with this version of the story. I say that he'll probably, Aang being Aang, end up being able to find some other type of way to defeat the Fire Lord. But hey, maybe this is the spot to end this video and make a new video some other time called, you know, what if Aang decided to kill the Fire Lord, or alternative methods that Aang could have used to defeat the Fire Lord without killing him. But for now, let's just say that he's able to do away with the Fire Lord in some type of very upsetting, vague fashion. And as promised, all this time passes, you know, almost 100 years or 100 years passes by. Aang gets really old and passes away from old age, or let's just say even passes away from battle. And lo and behold, a mother gives birth, Avatar Katara is born. I think that of all the characters that we see in the original series, that Katara is probably the most fitting to get that next Avatar, especially if we see the next Avatar after Aang in the original timeline of things is a female. I think that would be super dope to have, you know, Katara kind of be this super emotional and caring but extremely powerful bender. I think that she deserves it probably more than any of the other characters that we see. I can't really see Toph as the Avatar. She's not spiritual enough or as connected to others. Zuko's past is too complicated, and I think that he's too intertwined with a lot of the other things that's going on, and Sokka can't bend. So if we're changing up things, obviously that's up for debate, but I think that Avatar Katara is born, and thus the story changes down the line completely. But with that being said, guys, please pop down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about my alternative timeline of things. Do you think that Katara would be the Avatar if Aang ended up peacefully passing away and not having been stowed away for 100 years? Do you agree with my alternative timeline of things? What other characters do you think I could have incorporated into my timeline? And also just let me know if you guys like this type of what if style videos. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for all the continued support. Please make sure you like and subscribe. It really helps boost the videos for the YouTube algorithm. With that being said, J2A TV out. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Too many times I feel like I'm out of love. Is you really rocking with me, or is you a dub? I ain't playing with you, don't you treat me like a scrub. You could be my queen, is you with it or not?